This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 1005, recorded on Wednesday, March 5th, 2025. Time keeps on slipping. I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight we will fill your head with narwhal teeth, shark issues, and brain stacks. But first, thanks to our amazing Patreon sponsors for their generous support of TWIS. You can become a part of the Patreon community at patreon.com/thisweekinscience.
Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. Science is under attack. The value of research is being diminished, ridiculed, and defunded for politically and or financially suspect motives. This is nothing new. Science has always needed the support of society to succeed and, in some cases, to survive. Without that support, science and the great power of knowledge that it commands can simply go away. If the people with knowledge do not share that knowledge, the knowledge essentially dies. The importance of research to test and to try, replicate, validate, to publish new knowledge is what makes a modern society possible. Without it, what would we have? Many seem to have forgotten or never have learned that without a strong scientific culture and community, societies fail to thrive, they struggle to succeed, and in some cases, they might not survive. Water is not sanitary without science. You will not defeat sickness, injury, outbreaks, or pandemics without science. Energy is unattainable without science. Education without science is not education, it's indoctrination. You cannot have a strong military without science. Imagine an economy that's trying to run without science. Where farmers, aircraft, shipping, and fishing boats plan their days without GPS or weather forecasts. Buildings businesses, energy, electronics, financial systems, healthcare, agriculture, logistics, law enforcement, vehicles, military, communications, all rely on science. A society without science will be poor, sick, uninformed, undefended, and unable to understand when they are being exploited. Democracy itself relies on science, on reason, on critical thinking for rational decision making. Without it, the modern world just goes dark. But fear not, or maybe be a little afraid, but keep in mind, we'll keep a light on for you right here at This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki and Blair.
It's looping. I told it not to loop. Oh, we get to do it over again, everyone. Keep dancing.
One more time.
Oh, and when we dance with sprockets. Yes. Oh, another week, a lot more science. Justin, it's so good to hear that entry into the show. Welcome back. So good to have you.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Yeah, so glad you could make
like
it to
home.
this. It is like home. Oh, yay, the gang's back together. Woohoo! For at least one episode. Anyway, we have a great show for everyone tonight. Lots of interesting stories about the goings-on in the world of scientific research and technology. And I have new stories. My son is 14 as of yesterday. Oh my gosh. Breaking news. Oh my God, what is happening in this world? That's the big story. And then what else did I bring? I've got some Firefly and astronauts, got some fusion challenges, a sound spring, and a lot of intelligence, or maybe not really intelligence. We're going to have to talk about it at the end of the show. Justin, what do you have?
Oh, I've got a lot of questions. Do weekends really affect surgical outcomes? Can a smartwatch save your life? Could only 5 days of eating processed food negatively affect your health? And does the Mediterranean diet actually do anything?
I love all these questions. I want all the answers, and I want them to be right forever, because we know that that's the way that science works. Just one study and it gives us the answer for everything. Yeah, never mind. That's not how it works, everybody. That's probably what the conversation will be about.
Well, thankfully, these are, I think, mostly studies of studies. Some of them are studies of multiple studies. So it's taking all of those individual studies and turning them into one study. Might actually answer a question or two.
Wonderful.
All your questions sound like they should be followed by the words "tonight at 11."
Tonight at 8:30.
My impulse is always to answer them with maybe.
Yeah. Something in your house could kill you tonight at 11.
So what's the thing in the house that could kill you? Toaster, maybe.
Yeah.
Possible.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Big old knife, maybe.
Yeah. Careful.
Any of my
cutting
medications. No.
Drano, maybe.
Blair, what is in the animal corner? I can tell already. This is just off to a start.
I have sharks. I have narwhals. I have ratatouille.
I was gonna. First, I'm like, sharks, okay, and then the narwhals. I'm like, is it Elf? And then Ratatouille. You totally went Pixar. So, or Disney. I don't know. But
this is a drunk Ratatouille. I will just let you know.
They're better when they're drunk. No, I'm getting things wrong here again. Okay, I can't wait to hear that story, Blair. I can't wait to
drunk Ratatouille tonight at 11
with a narwhal picking your tooth with its tooth. No, okay, I gotta go now. No, I'm not gonna go now. It's time for us to do the show. So, everyone who is listening, are you ready for the good science? 1 second, because I do have to remind you that if you are enjoying TWIS, make sure that you are telling everybody you know about it, and that everyone you know is subscribed to TWIS as well. We are on the podcast platforms. This Week in Science. You can tell your friends. You can pick up their phones, and who cares about privacy and those issues anymore anyway? So just get on their phones and subscribe them to TWIS. It'll be the easiest way to go. We are a live streaming podcast broadcast every Wednesday evening, 8 p.m. Pacific time. And I guess now that Justin's back on the American continents, we can just say that, and we don't have to say the alternate times for the GMT and all that kind of stuff. No.
Well, the show still can be seen live, 5 a.m. Central European time.
It can. Absolutely. So, on Thursday mornings.
On Thursday mornings, though. We have to, yeah, that's right. This is the next show.
If you want information about This Week in Science, head over to our website, twis.org, where you can find show notes and links to podcast episodes, as well as links to subscribe. And now, it's time for the science. Let's dig in. Okay, my first big story off of the doc. Who likes Firefly? And no, I'm not talking about the insect Odonata. I am not talking about the old serial, I guess, drama.
Cowboy sci-fi?
Cowboy sci-fi, yeah. I'm not talking about that either. I am talking about The Craft, Blue Ghost, which landed on the moon this last week. 2:34 a.m. Central Time, 3:34 a.m. Eastern Time. Firefly, an aerospace company out of Texas, became the second private sector company to land a spacecraft on the moon. And this is soft land. This isn't hard land, crash, break into pieces. This isn't land and fall over. This was actually a really wonderful, successful landing. And there is video available to take a look at this landing, and we'll take a look at it now. And you can see the silhouette, the shadow of the craft coming down toward the lunar surface, and the dust being kicked up as the craft heads towards the surface of the moon. As we know, the regolith of the moon is very dusty, and that dust is also very statically charged, and so is one of the things that all craft have to prepare for the instance of landing on the moon and dealing with any electronic issues or joints getting gummed up or dusted up, I guess. But this is a wonderful success. It's great to see the private space industry actually successfully reaching these kinds of milestones. There is another craft that is supposed to be headed for the moon this week as well, possibly landing within the next 24 hours. So we will see where that craft goes, and how the machine, whether it's landing appropriately. So the Artemis moon landing is still scheduled for 2027. Artemis being NASA's, the United States, scheduled crewed moon mission project, Artemis 1, 2, etc. And we do know that the Artemis mission to date, with the SLS launcher and its Boeing craft that was tested last year, that it left a couple of astronauts aboard the International Space Station, and we saw that Boeing craft return without incident. However, we do know since then that there were issues with the craft that probably would have been an issue if astronauts had been aboard it. So it's a good thing they're still on the ISS. And this last week, the astronauts that are on the ISS have been quoted as saying they're fine. This is, they planned for a couple days, but they were prepared for anything. And that is part of astronaut training. It is being ready to be able to take whatever is handed to you when that comes. And so the astronauts on the International Space Station, Boeing and NASA astronauts, Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore, they said they're great. They're just doing what they need to do. They're a part of operations on the ISS. They've even done some spacewalks. And while they were supposed to be returned home according to original plans in February, those plans also have come and gone. And, now Musk is saying that he offered, free of charge to bring these astronauts home, a long time ago, but that the Biden administration turned them down for political reasons. Suni and Butch are quoted as saying they don't know anything about this offer from Elon to bring them back early. They don't know about the politics involved in this. They're doing good work up on the International Space Station. They even went so far as to suggest that the space station might, we might not listen to the commentary by Musk suggesting that we decommission the space station earlier than the 2030 planned decommission date, because they say there is such great work happening on the ISS. We would be really foolish to, and I'm not going to, these are not quotes, I am paraphrasing, we would be foolish to not take advantage of all of the opportunities and technology that we have working for our benefit right now, and that we would be left without a space station if we decommissioned it before the planned 2030 decommissioning deadline. And they said that they don't feel abandoned. We don't feel stuck. We don't feel stranded. I understand why others may think that. We come prepared. We come committed. This is what your human spaceflight program is. It prepares for any and all contingencies that we can conceive of, and we prepare for those. So, the ISS is doing great work. They say that the International Space Station is working very smoothly, and they're doing incredible work with international colleagues, and that everything is really working very well. And that and Suni Williams said, I mean, this place is ticking. It's really just amazing. So I would say we're actually in our prime right now. Suni went on to stress that the decision affects all nations invested in the International Space Station and is not and should not simply be made by the United States. So I may have put a little bit of politics in your science peanut butter there, but this is the way it works, everybody. All these things work together. So hopefully Suni and Butch will be safely on their way back to the Earth in short order, as soon as it is the best and safest time to be able to bring them back. But in the meantime, we can't go cutting budgets and decommissioning space stations while we have astronauts in space. And
I was just thinking, I hope the people whose job it is to get them home were still employed.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about too. Which does the United States have the authority to decommission the International Space Station?
Not alone, no.
Yeah.
I know. It's an international
right.
international space. We are the biggest budgetary supporter of the International Station.
Sure.
But this is not a decision that we go and make unilaterally. No.
Okay.
And that is why there is a 2030 decommission date. There are missions that are planned, and there are launches and missions. Everything is planned out. This is NASA. They plan things. So the issue is, the probationary employees. Some have been reinstated and rehired, which is good news, but not all are being rehired to all of the agencies where they have been let go. Mm-hmm. And there is another round of cuts that will be coming again. So I don't know. I think we all need to really consider, like what Justin was talking about in his disclaimer, the importance of science and our continued investment in it sustainably without interruption. Of course, things need to be cleaned up and worked on occasionally. We need to look at organizational aspects. Science is not something that should just run unhindered. We need to look at our practices and but the idea that you can take a machete to this beautiful bonsai of science that might be growing kind of crooked right now.
You mean a literal chainsaw in some cases?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to move on away from the space stuff. Yay, we landed on the moon again, but we didn't. It was a private company. And yay, oh, Suni and Butch are fine. Everything's good. But yeah, no, they haven't been brought back yet. That's basically the bottom line there. My kid's 14. Hey, Justin, what do you have?
Oh, is it that part of the story? Okay. So what was the question I asked at the beginning of the show, the first one? Do weekends really affect surgical outcomes?
And this is a story years back you reported on, and it was like, what, Mondays are a bad day for surgeries? Or like, what was it? What was the old idea?
So the idea is that the weekend effect refers to a trend of worse patient outcomes with medical care provided that happens before and then after going through a weekend. So surgery on a Friday. Those patients tend to have worse outcomes than surgery on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So sort of in the healthcare industry, this has been a concern. They think the effect might be influenced by variations in hospital staffing access to specialists on the weekends, care processes during weekends. Basically, it's the sort of thing that's considered a problem of the help, the workers. Okay. So the weekend effect also can refer to the fear on the part of patients that if they get their surgery on a Friday, that maybe the doctor or the surgical staff are daydreaming about their weekend plans, thinking about going golfing. Hey, it's a 3-day weekend. It's a holiday weekend. Where are you going? Oh, I'm going on this fancy trip that I got planned. So this is also something that we have as a trope from the auto industry. Like the idea that a car made on a Friday, that has worse, like then there's missing bolts or loose bolts or something because the mechanics are mentally checked out on a Friday because they're thinking about their weekend plans. Research has previously explored the effect in hospital settings, and there's been reporting that's kind of gone both ways. There's some reports of increased mortality for Friday surgeries, while others have found there's no pattern here at all. This is just a rumor, a fear thing. So there's a study now that's come out by a whole bunch of universities, including Houston Methodist Hospital, UCLA, University of Toronto, a couple of others. They went and did a very methodical look at this. So they took patient data from 429,000 plus patients that tracked when they got their surgeries and what their outcomes were compared to other days of the week. What do you think?
I'm going to guess that, oh man, there is no good day to have surgery.
Yeah, I'm essentially guessing no.
Can we just go there?
No statistically significant
Nothing's
difference.
great.
Right. Why should it make any difference? Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this is all on so they assessed first the short term, first 30 days. And then they looked at 90 days, and they looked at a longer term one, which was 1 year, post-operative outcomes. Analysis found that, for one, pre-weekend patient group had longer hospital stays than those who were admitted later, or on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Patients undergoing surgery immediately before the weekend had a 5% higher likelihood of experiencing a combination of mortality, complications, and readmissions within the first 30 days. So 5% more likely to have one of those things or a combination of them. I think mortality is kind of a big complication, but still. Risk of death, 9% higher at 30 days post-surgery.
Weekend.
For a Friday.
Post-weekend. For a Friday surgery.
For
Okay.
a Friday surgery.
Okay.
That trended even higher over time. If you looked at 90 days, the mortality rate was 10% higher. If you went to a full year, it was 12% higher if you had gotten your surgery on a Friday.
Okay, so surgery on Monday. Is this what
Tuesday, Wednesday,
Thursday.
any day but Friday.
Anything but Friday.
So this is the intriguing part to me. Scheduled or elective procedures. These are procedures where you need to get the surgery, but you can decide whether you want it, when you want to plan to have it. It's not like an emergency situation. Those had the worst outcomes. The urgent, unplanned surgeries, the one where it's like, oh, I might get this kidney out of me right away. Those actually had better outcomes. Then I think they even outperformed the other planned surgeries for the other weekdays. So they were like, oh, maybe it's the doctors. We'll look at their statistics. surgeons that operate on Fridays, on average, were on average 47 years old versus doctors operating on Mondays tended to be 48 years old. So a year different, nothing.
Nothing.
There was something a little more interesting. Years of practice that they've been practicing surgery. 14 years for the Friday surgeons versus 17 years for the Monday surgeons. But still, that's over a decade for both of them. So that doesn't really, statistically, it's slightly significant, but it's, The study concludes that variations in hospital staffing, reduced access to specialists, and differences in preoperative care processes may contribute to these trends. Future research should assess strategies to ensure high-quality postoperative care regardless of the day of the week. So again, they're blaming process. Here's my thinking. I don't think that any medical researchers or hospitals will come out and say, we think there's a liability for doctors to do surgeries before a weekend. Right? No. They're not going to say that because that's whether it's, human or not, it kind of looks like a negligence thing. We can see that the trend is real. So the concerns from previous research are confirmed. People's fear of the weekend effect on a Friday also seems to be justified by these trends.
But what I'm wondering, is it the surgery? No, not necessarily on a Friday, but actually the weekend care, so that the actual post-op care may not be as is the weekend care as good as the post-op care during the week, when the doctors are maybe not there during the weekend to check up on the surgery they did on Friday, and someone else is coming in and doing the checkup. So this is my question. It is also, this whole thing is very correlative once again.
Yeah. Well, I was also thinking about seniority. Yeah. And so, this is where the years of practice comes into play, which sounds like it's not relevant, but it might be relevant for Kiki, what you're saying about the post-care. Are the people working on weekends also less experienced because they don't have the seniority to have weekends off?
I would assume so, right? I would totally assume that's right.
But honestly, when you're in medical, what is a weekend? Come on, everybody. Don't they just work for forever? You're a doctor, you're a practitioner, whatever. You're just there forever now.
Yeah, do you want someone that tired working on you? Probably not.
No.
So, but here's also the thing, surgeons daydreaming about a 3-day weekend or whatever, it's a very normal human thing. That should not be ruled out. I think it would be too much to rule out that Friday effect where people at the office are like, "Whoa, what do you think about all this work?" It's Friday. Let Monday people deal with it. I don't think that should be completely ruled out of this.
So things should be scheduled on Fridays that are less likely to kill you, basically.
Well, and actually, the thing that
just don't have a surgery on Friday. Just don't do it now, everybody.
The weekend care, you could kind of say okay, that first 30 days. That's how you can tell it's the weekend care, because that was the only one that was higher. That first 30 days, right? They had a complication that the other ones didn't. But this is at 90 days in a year. It's also even more. It's even higher, which then kind of tells you no, maybe something went wrong with this. Maybe that surgery didn't get performed exactly right. And that's more of the complication. I get post-operative care is very important, but
is Friday the day that the makeup surgeries are? It's something went wrong earlier and they had to do another surgery. So it's I don't know. What is it about? What is it about it? What is the scheduling? How do they do it?
These are scheduled. Some of them are elective, but these are also they're kind of fall into the elective category because you can schedule it when you need it. It doesn't mean it's cosmetic or unnecessary or something like this. But I feel like they would have ruled out the makeup surgeries. That didn't come up in what I read. So.
Well, now that we have completely answered this question of do weekends impact do weekends impact the way that surgeries turn out? All right, okay. Blair, what's a narwhal's tooth for?
I don't know. What's a narwhal's tooth for with you? Is that no? Okay.
Making wishes? I don't know. Like,
so narwhals known for
Sensing
their...
ice. Tasting the brill. I don't know.
Tasting little fishy
Brill?
parts.
Check it.
Krill?
What do they eat?
Krill?
I don't know. I don't know what's under the ocean.
They also don't eat krill. So narwhals...
It's very cold krill.
Yes, they're from the Arctic. You're right about that. They're where it's cold. So that's a point for Justin. So tusk. What is a narwhal tusk made of?
Tooth.
It's
Everybody knows
tooth.
that. Everybody knows that.
There are
Not
people
everybody
who think narwhals aren't real, so I don't think so. But anyway, this tusk or tooth is usually found in males. Occasionally, females will have it. They can grow up to 10 feet long, and by and large, scientists aren't sure what they're for. This is where this gets.
Because they're unicorns of the sea.
Yes, they're very hard to observe. It's very hard to observe them using them for anything. And so there's very few observations recorded of these guys using their tusks at all. And so enter drones. This is actually a use of drones that I think is excellent.
Love it.
Aerial drones have taken video of narwhals from above. This is at the operation of Florida Atlantic University's Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute and Canada's Department of Fisheries and Oceans in partnership with Inuit communities in Nunavut in Canada's high Arctic, all work together to record these guys using their tusks in the wild. And what little was known previously about them was that they have done reproductive behaviors, some sort of posturing with these things. And so that could be why, but it also feels like there's some interesting selection that could be related to how they're actually physically used for something. And so...
like stabbing.
Yeah, like stabbing. And so they found them engaging in many different behaviors with these tusks or teeth. In this drone footage, they captured 17 distinct behaviors. So over a lot of different footage, they were able to sort these into kind of 17 different categories. Some of them were also not directly linked to fitness, which means it was akin to play or exploration or something just kind of frivolous that they were doing with their tusks, which is fun. They were using their tusks to investigate, manipulate, and then influence the behavior of Arctic char. So that is what they eat, Justin, not krill. Char, big old
kind
fish.
Of fish.
Yeah. So they were using them to kind of stun them. They were smacking the fish.
Excuse me?
Yeah, and in some cases, even making them completely unconscious or potentially killing them before eating them with it. So they weren't skewering them, but they were smacking them.
Well, yeah, if you skewered them, then you have a problem because the fish is stuck all the way at the end of this, and then you can't reach it because you don't have...
Yeah, there's no way to get to it.
Because they have no arms. Yeah,
Mm-hmm,
okay.
Mm-hmm. They also think they found some evidence of social learning, social instruction, and personality differences among narwhals and how they use the tusk. And, I mean, there's a lot here, but basically they had amazing dexterity, precision, and speed of movement with the tusk. They regularly made adjustments to track moving targets. The tusk is being used for a lot of things. And so this is just the tip of the iceberg. So we're in the Arctic, get it? And so there's very clear use of it for foraging. There's clear use of it for reproductive behaviors, but then there are also all these other behaviors that look like play or exploration or something more frivolous. And so this is a lot of opportunity for more recording. So send those drones out to record the narwhals, because we have a lot more to learn.
I'm just picturing narwhals hanging out. What? I don't see anything. What do you mean? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were pointing.
Yeah. So there's lots of social behavior that they recognized. Speaking of that, and so they think there is some kind of social learning on how to use the tusk, but also there's a potential kind of not fighting, not competition, but kind of some sort of display that could be kind of trying to ward off other individuals to say, I'm the biggest, baddest narwhal out here.
And just to be remembering previous stories that where you've talked about the narwhals, they do not use these tusks for any kind of electric sensing or like they're not using it for communication. There's nothing that they've been able to determine through research other than these behavioral things that you're seeing now.
Yeah. So, I mean, as a prominent piece of their face, it's no wonder that they use it for a lot of things.
Of their face. Oh
yeah.
God.
It's, I mean, come on. It's the whole
Not
thing
just their
about
face.
narwhals.
They're like a long sausage
10
with a spike.
feet. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, considering that, they found all these ways to use the tusk. I think the thing that would be interesting would be to try to drill down to what the environmental pressure was to evolve this giant tooth. Like what, because they're using it in 17 different ways that they discovered. All 17 were not the evolutionary pressure that caused these giant teeth to protrude from the front of their face and get to be 10 feet long. There is only one or two that really is the advantage that this gave them. And
so you're saying that they basically like they're off-label using their tooth. Like they did not have a prescription. Like they had a prescription and now they're like, oh, but I found out that it helps me this way. So
exactly.
Well, there's also the chance that this is just an accident. And
it's true. That is true. Yeah.
Post-accident, they're just like, oh, what do I do with this prominent feature on my face? I don't know. We'll figure something out with it.
So, Justin, most of evolution is an accident. It's mutation, right?
So
at some point, there has to be an advantage, though. Even if it's a big old accident, there has to be an advantage that would cause all narwhal males to have these.
But it could also be something that just has persisted without being a disadvantage.
Then you'd have both.
True. Yeah.
You'd have, what do you mean? But what?
You'd have males without giant teeth, if that were the case.
But it has evolved to the point where it's all males have this giant tooth.
If there is not selective pressure for the teeth, then you'd have both types.
And
unless there was a bottleneck, and there's not that many narwhals as it is. Like in terms of...
But even if there was a bottleneck, the fact that all males have it means that the genetics for not having it doesn't exist anymore. And so it would have to be a bottleneck that only impacts them, which would also be a selective pressure.
Yes, and we do know that through epigenetics and other genetic pressures that there are usually, even though they're not expressed, like we have chickens with genes for teeth, but they do not have teeth any longer. We can genetically get those genes expressed and make chicken with teeth, which is very disturbing. But the evolutionary pressures for the chickens do not create a need for them to have those teeth. So naturally, they do not present the teeth because the selective pressures have pushed them to the side, and they don't get their teeth out. But here we've got narwhals. Females don't have the horn, the tooth. It's not a horn, it's a tooth.
Most of the time. Every once in a while.
Every once in a while, which that's the interesting thing, right? So what's the thing that leads to the females? And do we have males that do we have males that do not ever have the teeth? All the males always have teeth.
I do believe they do, but I'm gonna do a lightning fast fact check here.
You can check that. We're gonna move forward to another science story. I love this. Not all peaches are fuzzy. What did you say?
Well, like the T-Rex did not have small arms.
No, for
T-Rex
body
had
size.
The normal right-sized arms that it had always had, but the rest of it got bigger. So sometimes the feature's like, what would be the purpose of small arms? No, there wasn't. It's not that there was a purpose for it.
But you don't see you don't see T-Rex with no arms. You don't see T-Rex with giant arms. You just have T-Rex with arms.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't see whales without teeth. All right, baleen counts, I think, or whatever that is.
We see all kinds.
Anyway.
So occasionally males are born and do not have the tusk. Occasionally, but by and large, the grand majority of them have it.
So the big question remaining is that we do not have the answer to, that might be where Blair is looking, but have there been genetic studies that also look into hormone levels and let us know exactly the factors related to hormones and gene expression during development in narwhals that lead to male versus female expression or non-expression of the narwhal tooth horn? I don't know. The unicorns of the sea are amazing. And the fact that they don't stab each other with those things, why are they not jousting? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, they should be jousting more. That's true. But also, see, okay, so one last thing. I'm gonna derail. One last thing.
One more derail. It's great.
If you could get drone footage of males doing behaviors and females not doing that behavior, and then females with tusks did that behavior, that would be a really clear indication of things that tusks were really advantageous for, right? Because you could really delineate, okay,
male
narwhal to narwhal,
yeah.
tusk versus no tusk. What is the difference in behavior?
How does it help? How does it not help? Yeah. Well, moving on from narwhals to nuclear fusion, as one does, we have asked the question many times. Well, I mean, I've asked the question, and I feel like I've asked it a lot of times on this show. Why is it that ITER had to shut down? Why did they not know about the impacts of the radiation, nuclear radiation, and the embedding of nuclear materials from the secondary aspects of the fusion reactions that occur at the core of things like tokamaks and other kinds of ignition fusion and other kinds of fusion reactors? This is one of the things that is potentially going to hamstring future efforts for nuclear fusion, because it's not something people have talked about outside of the nuclear physics engineering community too much. But apparently, when you have nuclear fusion, the particles that come from that reaction very often interact with carbon in the walls of the reactors in which the reactions take place. They're not just free to go wherever, they are still subject to physical chemical interactions. And when they impact at very high speeds because of the fusion and the forces that are involved in the energy output from the fusion reactions, the particles that come out interact with the carbon and other compounds in the walls of the fusion reactors and can embed themselves there and lead to decay processes that can either build up weird materials in the walls of new materials in the walls of the reactor, which would then over time build up and be a problem for future chemical interactions and molecular interactions from the products that are coming out and hitting the walls. Also, if you've got a tokamak where you're supposed to have a very clean, beautiful internal environment for the plasma to flow around in, we talked about it last week, Blair, right? The stellarator with its weird design, like the twisty
like
donut.
Mobius strippy thing.
Yeah, versus the regular donut-like tokamak, where we have to use interesting tweaked magnetic fields to keep that plasma spinning and at a high pressure and temperature inside of that tokamak. If there are impurities and other buildup in the inside of the tokamak, that itself could interact with the plasma and reduce the efficiency of the plasma and the reactions occurring within the tokamak. And so researchers are just publishing this last week it's in Nuclear Materials and Energy, Deuterium Retention Behaviors of Boronization Films at D3D Diverter Surface. Basically, they're using deuterium because deuterium is easier to come by, but they're using deuterium to model what could also be tritium-based reactions as well. And tritium and deuterium are two of the two of the compounds that are being used in these nuclear fusion reactions, and they are going to be used moving forward. So we need to be able to model what's going to happen so we can build better reactors and have better reactions. They found that boron films are deposited during these reactor uses. They used this facility that is not ITER, but they've been doing tests and have determined that the deposited films contain 10% carbon and co-deposited deuterium for a boron deuterium ratio of 5:2. So the boron, the carbon, and deuterium bond together, and they're suggesting that we need to figure out how to build reactors that do not contain carbon in the lining of the reactor core. So carbon has to be kept low to minimize the bonding that'll take place. Because you have to have temperatures of about 900 Kelvin to remove the boronized products that then begin to build up on the inside of the tokamak or whatever reactor you're developing. 600 Kelvin is necessary to remove deuterium that's retained in the boron deuterium bond then. So you need really, really high temperatures to be able to do cleanup after the fact. So anyway, if we can keep carbon out of the picture, that's great. So basically everything needs to be lined with titanium, basically. All of our tokamaks need to be lined with titanium. Justin, you're going to say.
But wait, when you start off, you said something about that it's radioactive?
Yeah, so it's because the deuterium is still bound to it. It is still radioactive, and it builds up over time, becoming more and more radioactive. And also the buildup itself is like the buildup of any kind of material on a surface, plaque in your arteries, etc. And it will lead to reduced efficiency of these kinds of reactors over time. So how do we keep it from happening? How do we make sustainable, long-term fusion reactors possible? How do we face this challenge for our energetic future? But I'm glad that researchers are looking at this aspect of it, not just like the how do we do fusion now. We're actually past that point, and we're actually getting to the let's build this stuff kind of part of the story. And now it's like, okay, we don't want to put billions of dollars in only to determine that we can use it once. And then after a month, we can never use it again, right? So how do we create something that is sustainable? So these questions are very important. Justin, tell me a story. I don't want to talk about this anymore. You want to tell me something about watching things?
Oh, I was going to tell you a story about, can a smartwatch save your life?
Could it?
So, maybe.
Hey Siri, save life.
Hey Siri, I need your help. Save my life.
That's
Thanks.
the story. Maybe. So... It's a logical next step for smartwatches that monitor heart rate and pulse, that sort of thing, right? Is that this is a machine learning algorithm running on a smartwatch that demonstrated the ability to detect sudden loss of pulse with high specificity, 99.99%. And moderate sensitivity, which is 67%, which I think means it might get it wrong occasionally. Might have a little bit of false
67%?
For sensitivity, but 99.99% specificity. And I've now obliterated which one of those means it gives a lot of false positives, but it sounds like it's pretty high false positives.
Yeah.
Or no, actually, specificity, maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it's very low false positives, but not always very good at actually detecting it. Or 67% detects it correct, but almost never gets it wrong.
Right. So it's
Could be either one.
67% sensitive for the,
Yeah.
hey, you might be not having a pulse.
Yeah.
And when it does do that, when it does
99.99% right. That's it. Thank you.
So if you are the type of person who has a very hard pulse, or you wear your wrist smartwatch very tightly against your body so that it's a strong signal, I would imagine that would be a much easier aspect of the sensitivity, right?
Yeah, it could be.
Could be.
So this was a study led by Google Research. They designed it to identify cardiac arrest events and automatically place an emergency call when it senses an event has occurred, with the caveat of if the user is unresponsive. So it can detect that the pulse has stopped, and then it's like, hey, how you doing?
I mean,
So
does it ask, did you take your watch off?
Mm-hmm. That was one of the first things.
Is everything all right?
Did you take your watch off? I don't sense a pulse. Oh, you're correct.
So this is specifically designed for the worst case scenario of a heart attack.
Yeah, okay.
And the worst case scenario of a heart attack is when you have a heart attack, which is a given in the heart attack scenarios. So it's already bad. But the worst case scenario is you have a heart attack and there's no one around. Mm-hmm. Meaning nobody can tell that you suddenly clutched and keeled over, right? Yeah. And now are in need of help because you're unresponsive and going into cardiac arrest.
Yeah.
So the design of this is smart, especially for people who maybe are living alone, maybe live very remotely, maybe, I don't know. Just home went to the restroom, and are alone for a moment, but are at risk.
Yeah, I mean, I could imagine this being the kind of useful aspect of a smartwatch for people who are probably in their 40s, 50s, 60s, who are not like you have bad health, you have a life alert monitor on you already, where it's just, this is a super surprise. There's never been any instance like this with your health before, and this happens to you while you're on a hike or you're doing, I can imagine that being the big thing, because a lot of people whose health is already limited, they're going to be, probably already monitored in one way or another.
Yeah, well, like if you're in a hospital, you probably, connected up to the boop, boop. You don't probably need the watch.
No reason.
On.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
It's when you're out and about. And this is especially if somebody's had a past, cardiac arrest, stroke type of an event. This might be a thing that you would want to have on all the time when you're not in hospital. So the way they trained it's interesting. They went to an electrophysiology lab. So there's patients who undergo defibrillator testing, ventricular fibrillation. There's arterial, they've stopped
atrial fibrillation, or
yes, and tourniquet-induced atrial occlusion. But basically, there's all sorts of things where they stop and restart the heart for people who have heart fibrillations, this sort of thing. So basically, they did this, tested this watch with hundreds of patients who were having their heart stopped intentionally under controlled circumstances. Plus, they had 21 professionally trained stunt people simulate cardiac arrest collapses. Which is, I don't know why I'm so amused by that. Like, so what's the job? Oh, you're going to have a heart attack and fall down on the ground. It's like, I can handle that.
Simulated.
But then like 10, 20 times.
What's interesting, I opened up the study and said that they simulated the stopping of a heartbeat with a tourniquet, which is, you got to crank that thing pretty hard to stop the pulse.
To stop the blood flow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good times.
So,
thank you, volunteers in this study.
So they road tested this, and they went out and basically, it looks like it was pretty successful. There was what it said, one false emergency call per 21.67 user years, which is I don't like it when they put things in user years because I always have a hard time really comprehending what that means. But what it means is It's almost without false emergency calls. Okay.
Which the current alert system on the Apple Watch, when they're like, your pulse is too fast or your pulse is too slow, I feel like there's a lot of mistakes with that one.
Yeah. And so the thing is, for this to roll out, for all the benefits that it would have, it cannot be making, if there's as many people with this smartwatch as there are people with Google phones or iPhones or whatever, with smartphones, you're going to have emergency calls all the time for people who are, maybe took their watch off or however it makes the mistake, wore it too loosely or whatever it is. So, or
who put a tourniquet on.
It kind of has to be perfect for you to call an ambulance, right? But still, a little, it's one of those things too that any product or any electronics that's designed, especially in the scientific field, is terrible, is awful compared to a consumer electronic device. Because a consumer electronic device ends up getting basically beta tested by tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people. And by the time we got this current incantation of an iPhone, it's been billions of tests on versions previous to it, right?
Yeah.
So again, even with the success in terms of specificity, it can improve in actually identifying correctly. I think once everyone's got this, we'll have this like, oh, it's more ambulance calls for the smartwatch. It will be like the year one. And then
it'll get better.
Be working. Yep. Then it'll just
unless
be working.
They take this into account and start building it in already. And just
anyway, go for it.
Moving on from the smartwatch and heart attacks, let's talk about hearing and your ears. The ears are so cool, and honestly, I really love our ears. Hair cells are important for hearing in our ears, and we know that damage to the hair cells in our ears over time leads to hearing loss. And once you kill a hair cell, you cannot bring it back. There's nothing I can do. I mean, Dr. McCoy would, he'd be like, damn it, Spock, there's nothing I can do. Anyway,
they could definitely replicate new.
maybe in the Star Trek future, this is what we hope for. But the question is, what are the different aspects of hair cells and hearing that are involved in that whole important process of transducing sound waves into actual electrical signals that allow us to hear and allow us to have what we consider our sense of hearing. So in the ear, in the hair cell, we've got in the ear, we've got the membrane of your tympanum, and that is the thing that's lined with these hair cells. And the tympanum, it vibrates, and it has different frequencies because it's a different shape. It's like this long spiraled triangle of membrane that gets smaller and smaller. So you have different frequencies that are highlighted or isolated at different points in that tympanum. And along there, it's attached to these little hair cells. And hair cells, they are in this membrane, bloop, 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 and they jiggle and they jiggle and they like to wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And the hair cells move around based on how the membrane vibrates. But then the hair cells themselves, they have like an ion channel that's attached to what has been like hypothesized to be a spring within the hair cell, and that this little spring mechanism probably stretches and has tension to it that changes the amount of that the ion channel opens and allows ions through that then go on to stimulate the neurons and change, to allow this electrical transduction to take place from the physical vibration. And so researchers now are publishing their work about the discovery of this new spring mechanism, which is very cool. They've used EM, electromicrograph cryptography, to be able to look at the setup, the shape of this spring and how it works, and have been able to understand the molecule that it has been hypothesized to exist, and no one has ever found it before. So congratulations, Cluster of Excellence Multiscale Bioimaging team in Göttingen. They actually were able to isolate and identify and figure out what this spring looks like and how it actually works. It's pretty exciting. And I think it is a really big move forward, because from here, what it allows us to do is to really nail down those little tiny pieces of the system and how the different parts work together. And maybe we can look and see which parts of the hair cells are breaking down. Is the spring part of the breakdown process? What is happening in that process of hearing loss? And are there genetic problems with these springs at any point? And can we actually help make better springs for your ears? I don't know.
We're so analog.
I know we are. It's so cool.
And then
our hearing is so awesome.
Except then, it's all this spring and hairy triangle situation going on, and then what's at the end? Oh, we just digitize everything to the brain.
Yeah, it is so interesting. We're such a simple system. Everything is set up from this physical to electrical, but it's not solely electrical. It's chemoelectric, so electrical chemical system and then you have electrical signals that are carried over not really wires within our brains and our bodies. And so it's just, our messy biological system of sensory perception is fascinating. And to know that it begins with such a very simple, machine is, I think, just so exciting to be, how do we make this machine? How do we fix the machine if it's broken? It's so wonderful. It gets me very excited. These are the things I'm excited about in the world today, is finding out about the things that we didn't know about before. And oh my gosh, if we support science and research into biomedical aspects of hearing, potentially, could you imagine not having to have hearing aids in the future? Could you imagine being able to heal people's hearing loss issues? Could you imagine being able to help people who are born without hearing if they would like to be helped in that way?
What about all the drummers? All the drummers could hear again.
All I can say is, from the number of punk shows I went to in high school and college, I really, really want people to figure out how to fix hearing before mine goes completely, because it's probably going to disappear at some point. But it is the funding of scientific research and development by our government that is one of the primary economic drivers of the betterment of our society. We can, by taking governmental funds, money that is, yes, from our taxes, and putting it to good use to help ourselves and future generations through the discovery of our world, the understanding of things, the knowledge generation engine of our time, science, I can think of no better thing that we could put our money to. There's lots of things that we can spend our money on, of course, but I don't think that there's a scarcity problem at this point. I think that there is an intelligence problem in the world. But you're smart if you're here with TWIS already. So bring the smart people over. Hang out with us. Watch more TWIS Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Pacific time on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Tell your friends about the TWIS This Week in Science podcast on Spotify, on all the places that podcasts are found. And head over to twis.org. click on the Zazzle link if that you're interested in supporting us and also getting some really cool items, pillows, towels, cool, I don't know, welcome mats, tote bags, all sorts of stuff. TWIS created, a lot of them Blair created. And so, support that. Support Blair's artistic endeavors. Additionally, Patreon, you can click on the link at twis.org and become one of our Patreon supporters. Anybody $10 and more a month, I will thank by name at the end of the show. It's kind of fun. I want to read your name, so please do that. That's all I wanted to say there. Really can't do this without you. So thank you for your support. Now, though, it is time for that part of the show that we all love. We like to call it this nice little bit of the show. We like to call it Blair's Animal Corner.
With Blair.
Yeah.
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. You want to hear about animals? She's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels. There's Animal Corner.
What you got, Blair?
Sharks are important.
Are they? What? Who said that? What?
I mean, many biologists, many times. But us humans, we don't like sharks. We want to get rid of them, often in areas where they might conflict with humans. We also like to eat sharks, a lot of humans. And also a lot of sharks are caught in bycatch, so accidental catching related to fishing for other things. So sharks have a lot of pressures on them. But a recent study by the Australian Institute of Marine Science found that sharks are pretty important to coral reefs. And that's because the absence of sharks correlates to the resurgence and just kind of population explosion of the crown of thorns starfish. Which, do either of you know why that's a problem for coral reefs?
Crown of thorns starfish like to eat them. They're bad.
They eat coral. Yes.
Yes.
And so I'm not even going to say that they're bad, but it's that you don't want too many of them. They are part of the ecosystem, but you want a very small influence by the crown of thorns starfish. If you have too many, your coral gets eaten up, gets stressed out, will bleach. It's a whole thing. So
the crown of thorns starfish are not responsible for the bleaching. It's just they're there when things are going bad.
They can be responsible because if they're eating at the coral a bunch, then the coral will get stressed out and go, ah!
Oh, so it increases that threshold for damage.
Yes.
Or reduces it actually.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So why would the absence of sharks increase the presence of crown of thorns starfish?
Ooh. Do sharks eat crown of thorns?
I was hoping you would guess that. No.
Darn it. All right. I went for it.
No. It's still quite simple, but not that simple. There's one extra step. So in DNA studies, they were able to find that small predatory fish consume crown of thorns starfish. But sharks scare small predatory fish.
Okay.
When sharks in a reef system are removed, it changes the behavior of small fish predators. So when sharks are around, small species, they feed close to the safety of their coral. That means they eat what's closest, which is the starfish. Eating starfish is not easy. Takes a lot of energy to kind of crunch them up. But when sharks are removed, then these smaller fish venture into the water column and they'll eat fish, squid, easier things to catch and eat. And so when they change their diet in that way, they actually grow faster because they get to eat more, right? But
not as energy intensive. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're not eating the crown of thorns starfish. And so the crown of thorns starfish can explode in population. And so just, I wanted to throw out there that obviously sharks are an important part of any ecosystem and we want to preserve them as much as we can. But there are also unintended consequences. It's more than just the direct prey items for these sharks. There can be all of these additional kind of cascading results when you remove an apex predator like that from an ecosystem.
It reminds me very much of the wolves of, I want to say, Montana.
Yellowstone.
Where was it Yellowstone? Now suddenly the forests were being replenished and the beavers were back at the dams.
The river
and part
moved.
of the problem was is because it was how the deer were interacting in the environment changed when the apex predator left, and it had all these downstream effects.
Yep. And so in that case, the pressure from the wolves, when that was absent, the deer went wherever they wanted and ate whatever they wanted. And so they overate in some particular types of plants. They went into clearings more often. They did all sorts of things that completely fundamentally changed the ecosystem that was beyond just, less wolves, more deer, less plants. It's way more complicated than that.
But it is a similar kind of, you have a predator who's there influencing certain behaviors and aspects of the ecosystem. And in this, I think it's so fascinating that without the sharks, the fish are like, I was only here because that's a dangerous neighborhood. So this is safe and I'm going to live and this is great, but this is not my optimal ecosystem. My optimal ecosystem is elsewhere and the food's better, but that's too dangerous with the sharks. I mean, that is so fascinating.
And Justin, why are the coral reefs so important?
They make half the world's oxygen, which
bingo.
Which almost all of the life forms on the planet Earth need to be alive.
Yeah, pretty important.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So there you go. The sharks, very important in more ways than one. Now, I want to move on because you really want to hear about
You're like, I'm done here.
Right? We got to talk about Ratatouille. Also, can I just side note, can we stop using AI-generated images on scientific press releases, please? That would be... I would appreciate
I guess, yeah. I guess the big thing is if it's coming from a paper or there's an artist who's done an illustration for some paper, I think people should use those images, right?
Yes, but I don't need to see a rat in a suit drinking white wine.
Wait, what? Okay, we're going to look at that right now. It's not in the paper. There is no figure in the paper.
Oh man, I just saw who wrote this. That's so funny. How did I not notice that before?
Who wrote this? Oh my gosh.
A young up-and-comer called Justin Jackson wrote this article that I'm quoting, and it probably is responsible for the AI-generated image. Whoopsie!
I actually have nothing to do with the images.
Oh, great! Excellent. Then
it's my editors. It's my editors. You're bashing. That's perfectly fine.
Yes. So this is my problem. The actual scientific setup for this experiment is awesome, and I want a picture of that. I don't want this. Okay, but anyway, let's talk about it. Rats can successfully distinguish between.
By the way, I had
varieties.
not seen this picture. I had not seen this. Until right
Rats can distinguish between two varieties of white wine. Riesling and Sauvignon Blanc.
They have nice noses, right? I mean, they have to.
So this is the part of the story that this is why I brought this. Is which I just feel like I should let Justin do it at this point, but.
I love this so much.
But yes, animals, pretty much all mammals but us, have a better sense of smell than we do.
Mm-hmm.
So if a sommelier, if a human sommelier can smell the difference between wines, so should a rat, right? Okay, regardless. This is a study out of University of Trento, University of Lincoln, University of London, and University of Vienna. And the crux of this is the idea that you need linguistic or human-specific context, cognitive abilities, conversation to make the connection between wine varietals. So that's another piece of this that I think is really interesting. Is it the other kind of crux of this is, are wine varietals made up? And the answer is no. So, because I think if you want to have an animal distinguish between different kinds of wine, then there has to be objective differences that can be detected regardless of who you are and what the context is. And I think that is ultimately what this study is getting at. Is, yes, obviously rats are smart and have good noses, but also wine varietals are distinct enough that a creature without language to talk about bouquet and notes and tannins and all these things can still identify the difference between a Riesling and a Sauvignon Blanc. So they took 9 adult male domesticated rats. They trained them on odor categorization tasks previously. And then they had kind of a, can you identify the Riesling? Can you identify the Sauvignon Blanc versus a non? And so they were really good at it. Overall, they maintained an 80% correct response for 3 consecutive sessions, trying to figure out which was which. So.
I'm really curious to find out whether the rats are able to learn more things like acidity versus, I mean, the generalization of categories of Sauvignon Blanc, Riesling, Gewürztraminer, you know, that's different amounts of sugar. There are different, this is like an apple versus an orange. You know, there are different types of apples, but those are all apples. There are different types of oranges, but they're all oranges, right? Same idea for these wines. So I'm not surprised at the general categorization, but when they can tell me what is earthy or what is has aspects of grass or, you know, baby diaper or, you know, whatever other words are used by sommeliers to describe varietals of wine, I think then we hire them for the wine award tastings. Yes.
There'll be truffle, there'll be tobacco, there'll be, you know, all these things that they have.
With Sauvignon, it's like, is it, or Chardonnay, is it oaky? Is it, you know?
So I went to one of these
shard.
I went to one of these wine sniffing events where they have all these essential oils or something made up of scents that go into, and then you're supposed to try to identify them. And I got one of them. I was like, oh, this one is an old motel room. The way motel rooms used to smell. And then somebody else was like, this is what my grandmother's house smelled like. And then we discovered it was tobacco. Which is like, it's something that you used to always smell in motel rooms because people used to be, you know, smoking in motel rooms all the time. And so it was like, that's what I associated it with. And somebody else associated it with their grandmother's house. And then there was like one that was like, oh, this is a forest floor. And that turned out to be truffles. But I couldn't identify anything for the thing that it was. I could just identify associated things.
Mm-hmm. I've done those before and am just really bad at it generally, and end up drinking the wine. That's just what I do.
I used to be pretty good at identifying varietals based on taste, and because I went to Sonoma State and I used to do like the wine road festivals up there, and some of the wineries would always have the brown bag contest where they would they would pour you wines and you'd have to match them. And then if you won, you got a free bottle. And that was always very fun. But it's something that comes with practice for sure. I remember I had taken a few years off and then I went again and I got them all wrong. Right. So it's something that requires
I can probably identify wines as well as a rat. Is it a white wine? Yes. Is it a Chardonnay versus Sauvignon versus Pinot Grigio? Sure. I can work that out. And they went a little further.
They also showed that the rats could generalize. So they trained them on some wines. And then they also put in front of them wines that they hadn't been trained on.
That's the big step.
To see if they could categorize them, and they were still able to. All except for one.
One rat or one wine?
One rat.
Yeah, so this one rat, Peanuts, my guy Peanuts, he couldn't figure it out.
Peanut.
Yeah. He had a higher rate of incorrect responses versus chance, so he was just really bad at it. So either he had some bad snooters or...
So it can't just be that, though, because in the training, they had to get things correct 3 times in a row, be more than 80% correct, more than 3 times in a row to move on to the next round. So I think what he did, I think he developed, my personal opinion on it, I think he developed a taste.
He just drank wine. He was just
like the wine. And it was like, this one's, or may have been, like a kind of.
It was only smell, though.
But we've talked about.
It's a smell. But maybe it was an affinity to like a connoisseur is like, I want to try them all.
But that's the exact point that I was going to bring up is not the connoisseur. It is curiosity, exploratory nature. We've talked about personality types in animals and how sometimes we have these tests that we're like, do this thing, animal. And we just want them to be like robots and just do it. And you're trained on it, but you're bored. And so now you, because of your personality, you're going to hit things at random. Even though you know how to do it, you have the explorer personality. And so you're going to be the outlier.
What if he had allergies and he was just a little
stuffed up?
Whatever.
Stuffed up.
Yes.
Well, when he actually got the reward during the training, he followed all the rules.
You're saying that he had a cold. Okay. Mm-hmm.
It's up to you now.
No, I think you're right, Kiki. I think it's a personality thing. He's just like, what happens if I do this? What happens if I do this? What happens if I do this?
I mean, because on the data, Badger wasn't amazing either. He was, probably within. They didn't have any standard of error bars around those responses for the falses versus negatives. So I'm wondering how close, really, if we compared their average performances, how close would the errors be between Peanuts and Badgers?
Well, I think Peanuts was the only one that got it wrong most of the time. The other 8 were correct.
That's like me.
More than chance, right? They were correct more than chance.
The other 8 got it correct most of the time, and then it was, I think, 6 of them that was statistically significantly making the right choice.
Oh my gosh. All right, Justin, it's time to move away from rat sommeliers. I'm glad you're back. Why don't you ask some questions and maybe answer them for us?
Hey, is 5 days of eating ultra-processed food enough to alter insulin and the reward function process in your brain?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to say yes.
Yeah. So basically they put these 29 healthy male participants aged 19 to 27 with pretty regular BMIs on an high caloric processed food diet for 5 days, where the group attempted to consume an additional 1,500 calories per day just from ultra-processed snacks. And there was a control group that, there was 11 of them in the control group. So 18 of them volunteered or got picked to eat all this junk food. And another 11 were the control group.
So when you're saying food, so the junk foods, the processed food, was it like every meal of the day they're like just eating like
I don't
Ho-Hos
have a
and
breakdown,
Twinkies
but
and sausages.
they have the normal, I guess, 2,000 calorie a day diet?
Right.
And then it was an additional 1,500 calories that they were supposed to eat.
That sounds bad for you, just generally.
But it was only 5 days. So what could go wrong?
That's like a vacation in Hawaii. Come on.
It was tougher than it looked, apparently, because the participants only managed to do an average of 1,200 extra calories.
I wouldn't be able to do it. Yeah. Unless it's all wine.
In that 5 days, their liver fat content significantly rose from 1.55% to 2.54%.
That's bad.
It's like almost doubled.
Yep.
In 5 days.
Oh my gosh.
There was no change in the control group. There was no evidence of any significant body weight changes, peripheral insulin sensitivity, or inflammatory markers. Those all looked normal, both groups. Brain insulin responsiveness was assessed through fMRIs. And basically, baseline immediately post-intervention, 1 week after resuming a regular diet. So they did a little bit of a follow-up there. And brain insulin responsiveness increased post-event in the right insular cortex, left Rolandic operculum parts of the brain, midbrain.
Yeah, just
pons,
those brain parts. Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm talking about, it's like talking about countries on a map where you've never seen the map, right?
Right.
All right. Anyway, insulin activity also was significantly lower in the right hippocampus and bilateral fusiform gyrus. Didn't even know we had one of those.
I love the fusiform gyrus. It's so important.
The changes in brain insulin responsiveness correlated with liver fat accumulation and the dietary fat intake. So there was no difference really seen in the hypothalamic insulin response. But what was interesting though is they noticed through some assessment tests that there was the reward processing centers were compromised. Yeah.
Yep.
Reward learning apparently relies on the brain's ability to associate certain behaviors with positive or negative outcomes, which play an active role then in future food choices. Disruption of this pathway has been widely observed in individuals with obesity, often resulting in altered eating behaviors, heightened preference for calorie-dense foods. So, just 5 days of this diet, and you could already see they were being put on the pathway to continuing to eat high-caloric processed foods.
Yeah, the brain was like switching over. It was like, this is what you're eating, and this is what we want. This is going to be a continual downward spiral. No.
So they were participants completed a go no go reinforcement learning task designed to measure sensitivity to rewards and punishment. Performance in this task is supposed to reflect how effectively the brain processes and adapts to feedback, which is crucial for lots of things, including regulating eating behavior. After just 5 days of consuming the calorie-rich ultra-processed snacks, participants showed decreased reward sensitivity and increased punishment sensitivity.
Oh my gosh.
Suggesting that participants found rewarding outcomes less motivating and gained a heightened reaction to punishments.
Like a negative reaction, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to be punished. Don't take the candy bar away from me.
I feel like this is what's wrong with America right now.
It's possible.
You've just all been eating too much processed food. This is what's affecting everybody's. They don't understand reward. It's just like, I don't like anything I don't like.
I just don't like punishment. Keep it away. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Effects did trend back towards baseline after a week of returning to a regular diet. However, they did not fully reverse.
So it takes longer. Yeah.
So short-term changes resembled obesity-related patterns, but these were observed in currently healthy weight men following only a brief high-caloric diet utilizing processed foods.
Okay, so the vacation diet, it's not going to impact you forever. It will impact you. It might be hard to get away from those kind of like, oh, now I have to like go back to how I was before and not let myself eat all the things or do whatever. You know, the 5-day vacation diet, it doesn't just go away after that vacation. But
you know what?
It's just, it changes you.
It was trending lower, but it, 7 days after, like.
7 days after, you still want to go back to that poolside tiki bar.
Still wasn't there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about the good diet, the healthy diet, the life-saving diet.
Please.
This is an EPIC study. That is the European Perspective Investigation into Cancer Nutrition Study. Bunch of studies, actually. And they're looking at the Mediterranean diet's impact on obesity-linked cancer risk. So, higher adherence to Mediterranean diet, as we've seen, is associated with modest reductions in the risk of obesity-related cancers. This has been seen and known. This particular study found a 6% lower cancer risk among participants with high Mediterranean diet adherence. And this was independent of weight. So, didn't matter if you kept correlating everything, the people are the same weights, you still have much lower cancer rates, obesity-related cancer rates amongst people who are eating the Mediterranean diet. Although, for some reason, this is like a problem I have with this study, which isn't a problem with this study. It's a problem I have with Greece, apparently. They have all
Greece,
these
only Greece. Okay.
Mediterranean. So this was across 23 centers where this was done. It was 10 European countries. Some are, more heavily in the Mediterranean diet category than others, and they, compared them to each other. So they're comparisons. They left the Greek population cohort out, and you're thinking like, who's more representative of a Mediterranean diet than Greek food? And it had to do, unfortunately, because these were retrospective type studies where they're looking at past studies. This is how they got up to, 500,000, 521 plus thousand participants. That were enrolled. But they used 450,000 in the analysis. The Greeks had to live out because the data was collected wrong or different or incomplete or didn't align with enough of the information that they needed for the study, which is unfortunate because that would have been a big part of this. But, even adjusting for all the co-founders, smoking, physical activity, education, alcohol, height, energy intake, diabetes, all of this stuff, body mass index, waist to hip ratio, they looked at it all, and median follow-up of 14 years, 4.9% of participants developed obesity-related cancers. High Mediterranean diet adherence was associated with the lowest risk of these cancers. Medium adherence showed similar, though less significant, improvements, and nothing to do with weight again.
So this is interesting because you brought that study about the blue zones and how those are kind of nothing because of it's all self-reporting on age, but that's about just strictly about how long people are living. This is something very specific that is, it's not just self-reporting. It's a little bit more concrete. And so, yeah, that blue zone might have more to it than that last study might have led to believe.
So So it was hazard ratios of 8%. High Mediterranean diet adherence had 8% less colorectal cancers, 48% less blood cancers. 33% less kidney cancer risks. And even the medium adherence was associated with lower esophageal cancer risk. Okay. Here's the thing. I'm a part of this is just a thing that Justin believes and may or may not be true. I don't think that the Mediterranean diet is good for you. I don't think that it's beneficial or doing anything necessarily that makes you healthy or prevents cancer. The thing about the Mediterranean diet is it doesn't include processed foods. So if you have a high adherence to the Mediterranean diet and you're in that category,
you're eating a lot of fresh foods and it's fish, it's like a good
just
balance.
Not eating poison.
And it's a good balance of all the necessary nutrients of
and
sugars
and
starches
things, and there's
right.
Yes, it's a good diet. It is a good, well-rounded diet if you're eating it all in the right proportions. But that's not what was looked at. It's only what was looked at is if you were eating things more on this list. And it could have been, you could have just been eating all fish or all nuts or all whatever it is. But if it was on the Mediterranean diet list and that's what you were eating. So I don't want to say balanced diet or any of that yet because that's not part of this. This was not covered. However, the thing that's not on the list is processed foods.
Yeah,
and those
absolutely.
are highly being used in some of the European countries where they are the controls. And the control isn't really a control. The control is just people who are eating processed foods, right? As opposed to adhering to the Mediterranean diet or eating whatever else is out there.
And, you know, if they're going to not include Greeks, it's probably because the Greek diet and people who are in Greece, that's just what they eat all the time. So that's what they've lived their entire lives on. So you have to kind of take them out of the...
but it wasn't comparing...
Yeah.
Within countries, because it was like all pooled in together. All these 10 countries were pooled in together. So they could have pulled the Greeks in there, but there was something about them saying also like, oh, this would also unbalance it or... But I think it
would have unbalanced it. Yeah.
I think it had to do with data collection too on this. Like they were all, that was one of the things that they attributed the removal from. But again, I think it has less to do with what's in the Mediterranean diet
than what's not in it. Yeah.
How do we know that this doesn't have anything to do with genetic markers and specific ethnicities or like genetic groupings of people based on location?
So, that's always something that can be part of it, for sure. But we're just not, I don't think that people are that genetically diverse when it comes to diet. Because these are also going to be people in the Mediterranean who are not adhering to the Mediterranean diet too, right? So it's not like everybody who lives in the Mediterranean diet, it's like, oh, here's your diet card. Here's what you have to eat. And the only things on this list because you were born here, right? So I think it's probably a pretty good mix. You can live anywhere in the world. You can live in Britain. You can live in America and eat the Mediterranean diet. So I think the genetics falls out of it pretty quickly that way. I think also one of the things
it's hard to balance all those factors, though. I mean, that is the big question: genetics versus environment versus your entire life and development and everything that led to you being who you are in this moment in time. That's why we have large sample sizes and we try to have balanced study design, and it's just hard to do. But that's the big point.
So here's the thing too. The last point
thing,
on this is,
because I have two more stories.
I know we got to go because you got to go. So these are obesity related cancers.
Right.
Obesity was not a factor in this study.
Mm-hmm.
Obesity was matched diet to diet. I think we need to maybe, because this is also in this EPIC study group, they've done a lot of research on processed food effects and increased cancers from people who eat processed food.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what we need to start really tackling this with is
spinach.
These are processed food related cancers. These are not obesity related cancers, because obesity is not the factor that seems to be determinant here. It seems to be whether or not you're eating stuff that has been highly processed, that has a bunch of chemicals in it that your body's like don't know what to do with, that changes the reward center of your brain, that causes you to have liver fat immediately. Like there seems to be.
I think there's there's an interesting question there too for dietary stuff, where we know that there was a study looking at the cancer-causing compounds in the char on meat for when you barbecue or when you cook meat and get a char on it. These compounds are also produced like when you make French fries, and it's something that 20 years ago they started talking about these things that I can't remember the exact name of.
Yeah,
but,
like black toast.
Right.
Like if you toast your toast too much, like you're eating carbon. Like how can that be good for anybody?
But the question is, out of the entire diet, if your diet is all processed foods and then you do a barbecue and it's, a dish, it's everything is, adding more and more and more of this, as opposed to a varied diet where maybe you do have barbecued meat, shish kebabs, maybe you do, but it's, sometimes it's fish, sometimes it's, lamb, sometimes it's maybe it's that. And also because of, like you mentioned, the antioxidant aspects of certain ingredients in the Mediterranean diet that kind of balance everything out. So maybe it's the types of fats, the types of nutrients, the type of antioxidants, and the proportions that put it all together. And suddenly you've got a balanced diet that over time does not have like carbon, boron, deuterium buildup in the middle of your tokamak.
But this could have all been like barbecued fish. Like, I mean, again, this study didn't delve into whether or not anybody had a balanced diet.
No.
It's just, do you eat the things on this list?
Yes.
With frequency, right?
Yes, so, I do. I love them.
Again, I think it's time to start looking at obesity-related cancers at the source, which seems to be, according to this study and a lot of studies into this EPIC
not
study,
the Mediterranean diet.
Umbrella. It's not that the Mediterranean diet is saving you. It's that the other stuff is killing you.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Well, speaking of things that are killing us, no, Kiki, the artificial intelligence hasn't started killing us yet. It's saving our lives. No. This last week, researchers in Philadelphia at the annual Association for the Advancement of Artificial Intelligence meeting, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, a report of a survey was unveiled, including responses from more than 475 AAAI, that's the Association for the Advancement of Artificial Intelligence. They were unveiled, and 67% of these responses are academics, people who study the advancement of artificial intelligence. More than 3/4 of the respondents said that making bigger systems, creating just bigger data sets, creating bigger systems is probably not going to let us get to the point that is called artificial general intelligence, which is the point that we've talked about being maybe equal with humans, right? So equivalent to human intelligence. Just getting bigger data sets and doing what we're doing in the same way, making bigger cloud processing centers, that is not going to get us to AGI. A higher proportion said that neural networks, which are the fundamental technology behind generative AI, also alone are probably not going to be able to get us to AGI either. Probably not going to get what we call artificial intelligence, any machine learning, to match or be better than human intelligence. So no AGI, no super AGI, what we're doing, it's great. It's doing good stuff. But the majority of the respondents, who a majority of them were academics, a majority of them said, yeah, we're doing good. It's great, but it's not going to get us to the place where OpenAI and others are saying we're going to get. And the pursuit of these particular capabilities, AGI and superhuman intelligence, says that we shouldn't even be going for that. Less than a quarter of the respondents said that the AI community should even be focused on achieving AGI. So the majority of artificial intelligence people are like, we shouldn't even be working on trying to get to AGI. That's like going down a rabbit hole. That's getting away from where we're going. One particular researcher out of IBM in this article out of Nature said, Francesca Rossi, she says, as the president of AAAI, says AI should support human growth, learning, and improvement, not replace us. So 84% of respondents said that the neural networks alone are not what we need. More than 60% of respondents felt that human level reasoning is only going to be reached by getting a lot of symbolic AI into neural network based systems. But basically, the neural approach is part of it, but it needs to be combined with other approaches to get to the complexity of human intelligence, to even get to where we are.
This is a group of academics.
Group of academics and people in the research area, who are, working at companies, and this is the Association for the Advancement of Artificial Intelligence, and
who have really good brains.
Yes, lots of good brained people.
Some of the best brains out of people, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, wow, whoa, why would you want AI to have a good brain like that?
Why do you want it?
I get it. The same reason that, we didn't want you to develop an automatic car building machine so we could keep building cars. No, now you get it. Now you get it.
I finally get it.
Thank you. Now you understand.
Yes.
Right. I don't know. I think that maybe it's like wishful thinking even at this point.
Yeah. To not get to AGI, or that AGI and beyond is wishful thinking.
To AGI and that it won't get there, I think, is wishful thinking on a bunch of big-brained academics who realize, this threatens the thing that we do. Like
the artificial intelligence could replace us. Oh dear.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Like that's
maybe
the
we
thing.
should stop it in its tracks.
Like all of this stuff. Like one of the things that the people who use the tool the most are the ones who are going to get replaced. You know who got replaced? By and large, accountants and people who do accounting work. Like they still exist. There's some they're lawyers now. They're not, doing math anymore. Because all the spreadsheets and the data compilers and just beyond the calculator, all the computer software that does accounting for people now has replaced a lot of these jobs. And they were the heaviest users of this technology when it came out to organize things and to calculate things and to put things into flow. So, everybody who's a heavy user of this technology is the one who is the most likely to be replaced.
Right. But the full acknowledgement of what AGI, what is artificial general intelligence? Nobody is even agreeing on it, the same way that nobody can even agree on what human intelligence actually is. And we're getting to a point where researchers, AGI is exciting. The idea of something equivalent to human intelligence, it is a really interesting concept. But I mean, I think the most interesting take-home point from this isn't hey, we shouldn't be looking at this top priority. I don't think that almost 77% of respondents said that it should not be the top priority. As interesting as it is, I don't think that's the biggest point. I think the biggest point is that the way that we're doing it, the current methods, are not going to get us there. And so I think that really gets at, what are the methods being used by OpenAI? What are the methods being used by any company trying to create these machine learning, artificial intelligent systems, how are they doing it? And if it's all based on just giant data sets and statistical correlation, that is not going to get to human level abilities. It will always be its own thing, but not human. It's not even going to be close.
I don't know. I mean,
you do know. They're right.
No, because I think we might be overrating human intelligence at some point. Then, if we're saying that human intelligence is superior to being able to take vast data sets and smash them together in a few seconds, because we can't.
They are different skills.
Don't.
They are not the same. They're not the same skills. They are different. We are great at doing things, but
when you say we, like
humans.
I think smart people are smarter than AI.
Right, but
I think there's other people who might not be. Like already.
That's very possible. I mean, that's what is human intelligence. And that brings me to my next story, my last story of the night, because, oh no, I'm not going to talk about my last story of the night, which is actually like the different ways that people love us. We're going to talk about love us. No, I'm going to talk about synthetic biology brains. Do you remember the story where I talked about the brain in a dish people the brain in the dish people who basically made the Pong game?
Mm-hmm.
So the brain in the dish played Pong. Well, they're doing other things now, and they have announced that they have created what they call body in the box. And they have a brain stack that they are creating that is available for rental for researchers. It is wetware as a service, WAS. They have created systems based on that first brain in the dish system. Originally, they were using human brain cells on CMOS chips. Now they have simplified that back to very simplistic silicon chips that the brain cells are grown on in a system that keeps the brain cells alive and evenly stimulates the brain cells across the chip to stimulate their growth and connectivity and interaction with the chip itself. So they have created the basically computer, biological computer processing systems that you can buy. You can just buy one, or you can, rent time. Say the same way that researchers rent time on telescopes around the world. You can rent time on one of their synthetic biological computers to test drugs in development, to test questions about synthetic biological intelligence and processing, how to build software for such a system.
So this is the thing that freaks me out.
It's a computer. This is the Matrix.
No.
This is like made of people. No.
There's a picture of this like box with some digital readouts on it on the screen right now. For those who can't see it, there's a brain in that box. There's brain tissue.
Brain tissue. They're brain cells, and they're all very simple brain cells. It's not, but what they've learned, one of the interesting things, is they've allowed the brain cells to differentiate as the brain cells want to. And so they are finding that the brain cells are like, we're going to make this kind of cell over here. And this new kind of cell is going to grow over here. And so it's like actually a developmental process that they do not control at this point. And they're trying to figure out how they can control the development of the brain cell types in the system to create more, standardized computing technology.
So like that's actually they're delving into an amazing thing because
very interesting.
Tissue and cell generation happens at the local level. Like the differentiation between what a brain cell is going to do or become completely depends on what its neighbors are telling it they need.
Exactly.
Right?
It's the whole system.
This is a very localized thing. The thing that freaks me out about this versus like digital AI. He said digital AI can break, and then it's just broken. I just have this impression that brain cells can just get damaged, but still function. And still be doing things in the world. Like,
that's the interesting question, right? If you don't have a human brain to work on, what about different drugs, right? You don't want to use animal models all the time to do research. Maybe there are ways to test certain compounds or certain therapeutics on the biological system without testing them on animals to find out how it changes the neuronal responses. How does it change development? How does it change so many things?
Yeah. No, it has real research potential.
It really does. I'm just very fascinated by their server stack, which is, it's so,
it's so head in a jar.
Head in a jar. It is. And they're calling the access, online access, the cortical cloud. This company is doing such interesting work. I think it's going to be really fun to watch them. But one of their problems right now is that because it's kind of AI, it's kind of brain research, it's kind of in the middle of everything. It's this weird synthetic thing. They're not like easily definable for the VC money stuff, and so I guess apparently they're not. They haven't sold their story well enough. So I don't know. This is probably all PR at this point. We'll see where it goes, but I think the work that they're doing and the technology they're advancing is part of a movement toward this biological, organic, inorganic crosstalk. Maybe the next AI is not just neural networks, but it's actual like synthetic biological neural networks.
So this is then the way you get to the AGI.
I think so. Yeah,
I think the internal dialogue, that crosstalk that doesn't take place on the digital. They can't be quite simulated because the AI isn't writing the code that it needs for itself. But the brain cells are like, hey, I need this process. And then the neighbors all tell this brain cell, you need to differentiate to this because we need this part of the process added.
Strap some of those trays to a Roomba, you're in trouble.
Oh my gosh. Yes, please. And then it's like the goldfish that drives its tank around where they did that system. But then you've got the brain in a dish attached to a Roomba, driving the Roomba. Oh gosh. Mm-hmm. And that's when we get the robot rebellion is when
Roombas with brains in jars. Yeah.
There was a zebra fish study not too long ago. I can't really remember the details, but it was neuronal cells that were in the midbrain that were tracking location. How the zebrafish is located, where other things are located. And they found basically the same gene generated cell differentiated like 30 different ways based on where it ended up, based on its location, so that and it was,
we talk about a quote unquote cell type. It's basically an environment, right? It's like, what do I need to be? And the plasticity is amazing.
It's one of those things where you realize again, the genetic code is not so much instructions as it is a list of ingredients. And that those instructions happen in these sort of collaborations between cells, making decisions on that level and pulling from the ingredient list of the genetic code. There's layers to biology that digital is going to have a hard time replicating.
Fully digital. Mm-hmm. Yeah, these researchers say that their work so far, that their chips, these biological silicon chips, are an ever-evolving organic computer, and it learns so quickly and flexibly that it completely outpaces silicon-based AI chips used to train existing large language models like ChatGPT. They've also been able to show that they've been able to create a system that is electrically stable, where you put in a certain amount of current and you are able to draw a similar amount of current out. And they have a stable network, but it is consistently evolving to its needs. They learned early in the Pong game that the brain, the neurons like stability. They don't like chaotic signals. And so that's like reward and punishment. And so predictability is what it's built in. So there are these already gates that the neurons are aiming for. And they're saying that the computers that they're developing are actually less energy intensive than a lot of modern computers. And so this tech, the units, they're expecting to have a price tag of around $35,000 for one of these cortical cloud systems. An entire rack of these CL1 units uses about 850 to 1,000 watts of energy, fully programmable, offering bidirectional stimulation and read interface tailored to enable neural communication and network learning. And it doesn't require an external computer to operate because it is the computer. Input in, output out. You can potentially, as a person, where as a service, you could rent time on CL1's wet computer systems. Oh my gosh. But people, we're people. We are so very much people. And apparently, according to this last study, LAVAS, published in Personality and Individual Differences. I really like the name of this journal. It's like my new favorite journal name ever. Researchers looked at variation in the expression of romantic love. They did a cluster analytic study of young adults experiencing romantic love. 809 partnered young adults took a survey in 2022. Yeah, they were all at home, not doing things they wanted to do. And they reported on their intensity of romantic love, obsessive thinking, commitment, and frequency of sex each week. So you know this is not accurate. They determined that there are 4 different categories of lavas, romantic lavas. The mild romantic lovers are characterized by the lowest intensity, lowest obsessive thinking, lowest commitment, and lowest frequency of sex.
Boring, out of here.
Mild romantic lovers. 20% of their survey said. 40% were moderate romantic lovers, characterized by relatively low intensity, not just low intensity, but relatively low intensity, relative low obsessive thinking, relatively high commitment, and relatively moderate frequency of sex.
Maybe
Type 3. Type 3, about 10%. Libidinous romantic lavas. They're relatively high intensity, relatively high obsessive thinking, relatively high commitment, interesting, and exceptionally high frequency of sex.
Yeah, not worth it. All that obsessive thinking.
All the thinking. It's so much thinking. Yeah. And finally, they're intense romantic lovers. My lava, intense. 29%, 30%, characterized by the highest intensity, highest obsessive thinking, highest commitment, and yet just a relatively high frequency of sex. They're not libidinous. They are intense. Anyway, you decide who you are.
I need more categories.
How do you fit into this? Just very basic.
I don't like any of them.
This Punnett square of lavas. Are you a brain in a box? Are you a black box?
I haven't stopped thinking about that. Like the concept of renting a brain sounded like really freaky, and then I was like, "Well, that's like working."
Somebody else rented your brain.
It's like what working is. People renting your brain. That's all that is.
I will pay to have you use your brain and body to do these things I need. Yes, okay.
Yeah. People have been renting their brains for thousands of years. Nothing weird about that.
Are we all cortical prostitutes? I don't know. Something for you to think about. Maybe I was verklempt. I don't know. Oh. Hey, everybody. Have we done it? Yeah.
I think we're there. I think we did.
I think we did. I really do. I think we did.
Kiki,
Thank you
you're
for
running
joining
late.
us. I know I'm supposed to go have a conversation with somebody. I had a 10 o'clock appointment and I am late. So it's time for me to end the show. Are you all ready to end it? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So no after show.
No. Yeah. Very short after show. We will close it out and say goodnight. I want to, before we go, though, make sure I say thank you. Thank you to everybody in the chat rooms who are watching live. Thank you. I see you in the chats. Really appreciate that you're here, throwing your ideas into the chat, interacting and being a part of the conversation. It just makes it so much more fun. Discorders, thank you for being a part of making the show happen. Really glad you're there. I will find my way back eventually. I promise. Everything's such a long, winding path to get through. Additionally, thank you, Fada, for all your help with social media and show notes. The work you do is so helpful. Identity 4, thank you for recording the show, except for tonight, because I think you took the night off. And Rachel, thank you for editing the show. And Gord, Arlor, others who help to keep our chat rooms really good places to hang out. Thank you for taking care of our chats, making sure everybody is happy and being nice to each other. Everybody, be respectful, be nice, be compassionate. That's what we do here. And finally, thank you to our Patreon sponsors. As always, I really am grateful that I get an opportunity to read all your names like I'm going to do right now. Thank you to Robert W. Farley, Lauren Gifford, Dana Lewis, Eden Mundell, Alan Viola, Aaron Anathema, Arthur Kepler, Craig Potts, Mary Gertz, Teresa Smith, Richard Badge, Bob Coles, Kent Northcote, George Corris, P.L. Verazarb, John Ratnaswamy, Chris Wozniak, Begard Shefstad, Jonathan Stiles, aka Don Stylo, Ali Coffin, Shubu, Sarah Forfar, Don Mundus, PIG, Stephen Alberon, Daryl Myshak, Andrew Swanson, Fredus 104, Sky Luke, Paul Runovich, Kevin Reardon, Noodles, Jack, Brian Carrington, David E. Youngblood, Sean Clarence Lamb, whoops, I scrolled too far again, John McKee, Greg Riley, Mark Estenflow, Steve Leisman, aka Z, McKen Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rappin, Richard Rendon, Minish, Johnny Gridley, Remy Dave, G. Burton Lattimore, Flying Out, Christopher Dreyer, RDM, Greg Briggs, John Atwood, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Rodney Lewis, Paul Phillips, Shane, Kurt Larson, Craig Landon, Sue Doster, Jason Olds, Dave Neighbor, Eric Knapp, Hello, Lon Makes, EO, Adam Mishkon, Kevin Parachan, Aaron Luthen, Bob Calder, Marjorie, Paul D. Disney, Patrick Pecoraro, Tony Steele. Thank you. Thank you to all of you for all your support on Patreon. If you would like your name to be read out loud at the end of the show or just want to help out, head over to twist.org and click on the Patreon link. Become a member of our Patreon community. On next week's show,
we will be back Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific Time, broadcasting live from Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and other channels where they may be available.
Want to listen to us as a podcast? Perhaps while you strap your brain in a dish to a Roomba? Just search for This Week in Science for podcasts are found. If you enjoyed the show, get your friends to subscribe as well.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes, links to the stories will be available on our website, www.twist.org, where there probably is not a way to sign up for the newsletter at this point.
It's still there.
Is it?
We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address or a suggestion for an interview, please let us know in one of our social media accounts or send us an email. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, in the subject line, or your email will be dropped into a glass of Riesling being drank by a rat on the moon, and we'll never read it.
But we will look forward to discussing science with you again next week anyway. And if you learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science.
This week in science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 Science.